I was on a cruise ship for Thanksgiving and went with my entire family. As an attempt to get away from my brothers, I stayed in my grandparents' cabin. On the first day of the cruise ship, I walked around meeting people, and some of the people I met were really into basketball, as I was. So we set up a scrimmage late night, so we could all eat dinner and whatnot. The only problem was that the basketball courts closed at 7, so we would have to sneak in. My little group was playing every day and became my late night routine. Skip forward to the last night on board, where my group was playing a pickup game as we always did. I felt a buzz from my pocket, so I stopped playing for a second and read my text message. It was from an unknown number, saying, "Go check on your grandparents." So not thinking twice, I said goodnight to my friends and went down to my floor. After the long walk and the elevator ride, I made it to my floor. I arrived on the complete opposite side of my room, so it was a long walk. As I was walking, I see this tattooed man staring at me on my left side. I am a paranoid person, so of course I admittedly thought something was going to happen. We walk past each other, no problem. But he stops and says, "Excuse me, did you see the gentleman who came out of this room?" And I replied, "No." The mini conversation was over. We both went on our ways. So I thought. I took a glance behind, and now he was walking in my direction. I sort of slow down to see if he will pass, but when he gets close enough, I remark, "I'm such an idiot, my room is on the other side." The creepy man looks a little angry and says, "You're lying. Your room is at the front. Here, let me take you to your grandparents." My face turned white. However, I knew what would lie ahead if I went with him, so I took off running. I looked behind to see if he was chasing me, but he wasn't. So I stopped running and started walking. I was relieved until I heard loud footsteps, so I looked behind once again and it was the man chasing after me, so I started to run again. The man caught up and grabbed me, but for some reason I was so scared I couldn't let out a scream. I was hoping someone would come out of their rooms to save me, but like I said, it was the middle of the night and nobody was around. He took me to this room where there was no furniture. I looked in and there was this woman sitting on the ground in the shadows. I could tell she was overweight. The guy shoved me in and told the lady, "My shift is over, I'm going to sleep." The dark figure nodded. Again, I was still in complete shock. My legs felt like 300-pound weights. The woman grabbed me and said, "I'm getting married soon, so this is the last amount of fun I'm going to have." Don't forget, I was a minor at the time. My vision was fading in and out, and I thought I was going to collapse. But suddenly, the buffet was coming up in my stomach, and I threw up on her. After that, I left the room and sprinted all the way to my grandparents' room. I got in there, double-bolted the locks. My grandparents woke up and said everything was okay, and I was thinking, let me spill my guts over what just happened. However, I said the security guard found my friends playing basketball, so we all ran from him. They said okay and went back to sleep. Meanwhile, I just stayed in the bathroom all night. Not because of the buffet, but because I was really scared. The guy must have been stalking me and seen me go to my room with my grandparents over the few on board. So I was really freaked out, thinking he knew my room. I stayed up all night, but there were no problems. My family created a plan to go to brunch in the dining hall, so we all got up at 8 and went there. The waiter was taking us to our seats. I was scanning the area when I noticed the same man who chased me yesterday with an overweight woman and a couple of other goons. They saw me too, so they all started staring at me. My whole family went to be seated, but I was in the middle of a staring contest. Luckily, my mom saw me and saw what was going on. My mom looked at me, then looked at the table and said, "The guy with all the tattoos proposed to a girl a few nights back." I said out loud, "What the actual fuck?" My mom hit me again and said, "Watch your mouth and go sit down." I ended up sitting down so my back was to the table of the creeps. I never said a word about what happened that night, and I don't plan on telling my family because I'm worried they won't want to take me on cruises in the future. However, I was texting my new friends from the basketball courts and told them what happened that night. One of them said, I was chased by the same man. However, I was able to outrun him before he caught me. I was a bit relieved I got that off of my chest, and I wasn't alone in the situation. I still decided not to tell anyone else. I really don't understand how those people got my phone number. But the tattooed man and overweight woman? Let's not meet.
This was a strange encounter. It was very scary at the time, but when I tell people the story, they usually don't think it was something to freak out about. Last Thanksgiving, I was driving home from college with my friend. I live in a very isolated part of Arkansas that requires driving through an hour of hairpin turns in the mountains. There are lots of blind turns, and the whole time you're driving on the edge of huge drop-offs with no barriers. I'm usually pretty confident driving through the mountains, but we were in my friend's car, so I was going slower than usual, driving about 5 over the speed limit. As soon as we started the roughest part of the drive, another car was tailgating us pretty close. This was stressing me out, and as soon as I saw somewhere I could pull over, I did. I pulled into a church parking lot, and my friend offered to drive the rest of the way, but I declined as it was completely dark and she had never driven this route before. We get back on our way, and a few minutes later I have to come to a screeching halt as there's a car stopped in the middle of the road. It wasn't on the shoulder at all, just stopped dead in the middle of the road. My friend is saying they must have broken down but can't call a tow because there's no service in this area. I immediately have a bad feeling and lock the doors. I tell my friend to stay in the car no matter what. She's starting to get scared at this point and points out that she thinks it was the car that was following us. I can't tell, but I am very scared at this point. It's parked right before a hairpin turn, so I can't pass it. My friend starts frantically telling me to go ahead and pass it, but I don't want to get hit by a Mack truck or fall off the mountain. I honk my horn. Nothing happens. No chance of calling for help as there is no cell service. We wait there for a while doing nothing. My friend is crying and freaking out, but I'm too scared to try to pass them. I honk a couple more times, and eventually a guy gets out of the car, comes around back and leans against his car just staring at us. My friend is freaking out even more, and I'm just frozen. I tell her not to make eye contact. I'm ready to floor it if he does something, but he just stands there staring. He's not checking his car or anything. I try to stay calm and pray that another car will come along soon. This goes on for what seems like forever, but was probably only 15 plus minutes. He's just casually leaning against his car looking at us. Eventually we see car lights in our rear view, and then the guy jogs to his door and gets back in his car. He speeds off, going dangerously fast. So there is nothing wrong with this car. I start driving, not wanting to cause a wreck. We don't see anything else for a while, but we pass the same car parked along the highway a while later, and it pulls back on and starts tailing us again. I try to speed up and get rid of him, but he keeps following. We have cell service at this point, but I don't know if we should call the cops because nothing really happened. I call home and tell my brother what's going on and tell them to wait on the porch for us. The car follows me all the way home down the really long drive to my house. I get to my house and my two brothers are waiting on the porch holding their deer rifles. I pull in and the car just goes to the end of the drive, loops around, and speeds off back the way it came. We tried to seize plates, but we couldn't make them out. Me and my friend were really freaked out, but when I told other friends this whole story, they didn't really think it was a big deal.
So, I'm a male nurse at a large hospital in San Francisco. I work in the ER, and as is custom, Thanksgiving night was very busy. Now, my wife is also a nurse for the same hospital. She works in labor and delivery. Between babies being born left and right and people coming into the ER, we hadn't had a chance to take a break together, as we try to do every shift. So when she called, I figured it was to say she wanted to meet up for a bite to eat in the cafeteria. When I answered, I heard in the background a male voice screaming profanities in the background, and my wife, who was fluent in Spanish, trying to calm this guy down. I quickly hung up, called for security, and told my fellow nurses what was going on, and ran for labor and delivery, worried sick about my wife. When I ran almost square smack dab into this visibly angry man. He wasn't huge, but bro definitely worked out, and not at the gym. He was covered in prison tattoos, and he was obviously a banger. I work out regularly, but I knew this guy could kick my ass. He looked at me, gave me this sick grin, and started heading towards me, sprouting off in Spanish. I don't speak fluent Spanish, but what I could understand scared the living shit out of me. I'm backing up as fast as I can. I start buzzing the door to the ER frantically for them to let me in. This guy's literally a foot away from me, and the door opens and I'm pulled into safety by a doctor. Gangbanger punches the door a few times, makes a dragging sign across his throat while grinning at us both. Next thing I know, the police rush into the corridor he's in, and it takes 2 security officers and 2 cops to subdue this dude. I finally make it to my wife, who thankfully was shaken up but unhurt. She explained to me what happened. A young girl, only 14, came in, high fever, vomiting, distended belly. The banger claimed he was her brother and they needed to cut her open to get her baby. They did an ultrasound, and to their horror, they realized she wasn't pregnant. She had bags of drugs in her stomach. Homeboy freaked out when they informed him his sister needed emergency surgery. And no, he wasn't getting his drugs. Thankfully, the girl survived, but the sad thing is, she will be going to most likely be deported once she recovers.
To start, I will share that I'm a 21-year-old female who was living with 2 other female roommates at the time of this incident. Neither of them were home as they had left for Thanksgiving break from our university. To give context, my apartment at the time was set up like this. The living room and kitchen were right beside each other with a wall separating the 2. There was a window on the back wall of the living room as well as a window on the back wall of the kitchen that gave you a perfect view of our back porch. Beside the window in the kitchen was a door that led to the porch that we always kept securely locked. It was the last day of our Thanksgiving break, and I was sitting in my living room with my best friend who had returned early so we could spend an afternoon together cracking open a couple beers and hanging out before classes started again the next day. We had spent a few hours just hanging out, drinking, and watching TV. Suddenly my best friend said, "There's a man on your back porch." I immediately went into high alert as our back porch was not commonly accessible. It was guarded by a wall of trees, and there was nothing about our apartment that would signify to someone that they should enter the back door instead of the front door if they were just stopping in to visit. I immediately ran to the kitchen as I could hear the doorknob jiggling. I firmly grasped the doorknob and loudly yelled through the window, "Can I help you?" I saw a fat, bearded man, not in any uniform or with anything that would signify he was working or providing some sort of service. He looked at me and said, "Yes, how many people live here?" In the heat of the moment, all of my common sense disappeared and I told him 3. He then proceeded to tell me that the property was for sale and he was there to inspect my apartment. I glanced down at the exterior sill of the window and noticed a key, sitting on it labeled with the name of our rental company plus the word master. I calmed down for a second thinking he was credible and said, "I'm sorry sir, but my landlord never notified me of your visit, therefore I'm not letting you in. Come back once my property manager gets in contact with me and comes with you for the visit." He then asked for my information, which I gave him. By that point I had assumed that he really was there to inspect our apartment. Our building was over 110 years old, so it may have been time for our landlord to rid himself of it. He left after taking my name and phone number. I immediately furiously emailed my property manager, pissed that she would allow someone access to my home without my permission. I shared with her that the man had said my apartment building was for sale. She responded and said she was unaware of the sale but would contact her boss, the property owner, so that we could all finally be on the same page. Fast forward 2 days, my property manager casually emails me, "Good thing you didn't let this man in. I don't know how he got the key to the build. I don't know how he got the key, but the building is not for sale. Therefore, this man had no reason to be attempting to come into my apartment, nor should he have had a master key." As I thought about it more and more, I found myself wondering why the back porch. If he was really there to inspect the apartment with a master key, the most sensible entrance is the front door, as it gives access to all 3 apartment entrances of our building. Our back porch only leads directly to our apartment, and who just chooses to enter the back door anyway when it's so much more difficult to access in comparison to the front door? It made me feel that his motives were not good and he was making every effort to be sneaky. Our property manager completely undermined how terrifying the experience of a complete stranger having access to your home is. She brushed it under the rug with a smiley face in an email and never again addressed the fact that some strange man could potentially have access to an apartment that houses 3 women. I strongly believe that she treated it like it wasn't a big deal because the only way he could have gotten a key was through her negligence, as she is the only property manager for the rental company. She didn't want to take fault for the potential danger she put us in. In reflection, I was really upset that I had given this man my information, and even more terrified thinking about what could have happened if I had not grabbed the door before he got it unlocked. I am grateful that I stood my ground as a tenant and refused to let him in because I had a really hard time sleeping for the rest of the semester, as this experience rid me of my feeling of safety. I no longer felt okay having my windows open or uncovered, or even being alone in the apartment. Ultimately, I'm grateful that nothing happened, but still pissed that the experience was approached like it was a laughable inconvenience.